And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Week 8 Waiver Wire Show. My name is Dylan Burd here on the Sports Burd podcast. So normally I pre-record this video, post it on YouTube, but wanted to experiment with a few things here today. So we went live. We decided to go live. Again, things might not be as high quality today as they normally are in the video, but I am just trying to get things together. I'm trying to figure things out, and this is just pretty much an experiment. I'm going to do the Waiver Wire Show live today, so really excited to get into that. We have a lot to talk about today. So before we get started, I just wanted to let you know, and you could see it in the banner here. If you don't follow me on Twitter already, you could follow me at sports_bird. And if you're not subscribed to this channel, be sure to subscribe to it on YouTube here. Also, be sure to like this video and be sure to subscribe to the Sports Bird podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So let's get started. So I usually have these graphics in the background. I describe it like a Scott Hansen quad box type thing where I have each division. We go through all 32 teams and we go through all 32 teams. We talk about injuries. We talk about waiver wire replacements, etc. So I'm going to attempt to screen share these graphics right here. So we'll see how this works with the live stream. And let's see what we're doing here. So we always start with the AFC East. We'll see how this goes. Oh, perfect. Okay, so this actually is working out a lot better than I thought. So let's get started here with the AFC East. So first we have wide receiver Jamison Crowder, who missed week 7 with a groin injury. And we did have Denzel Mims, who came back from injury, returned. He hasn't played yet this season. The rookie, the second-round pick out of Baylor. He had 4 catches for 42 yards, receiving on 7 targets. So normally I would say Denzel Mims is a guy that you want to look into, but the Jets are just so bad. I have the same thing up for the Jets every single week where I just keep updating their record and saying that they've scored less than 20 points in basically every game. They're 0-7. They've scored less than 20 points in 6 out of 7 games. And unless you have Jamison Crowder on your roster, there's pretty much no reason to touch them. I mean, I always put the RB snap share up there, especially with Bell gone. It seems like LaMichael Pirine should be for sure getting more of the snaps, and he did this week. He finally outsnapped Frank Gore. I believe this is the second straight week he did that. He had 11 carries for 31 yards and a touchdown rushing, 2 for 16 receiving, and then Frank Gore had 31.4% of the snap share, 11 carries for 60 yards rushing. So again, if you're in a very, very deep league, I'd consider picking up Pirine, but again, I'm a Jet fan myself. I'm always very out on the Jets, especially for fantasy purposes. So look at Mims if you're in a deep league. Look at Pirine if you're in a deep league, but I would not stress over the Jets too much. Now, moving on to the Miami Dolphins. Bye week. Tua starting next week. I am really, really excited to see that. Not going to talk about them because they were on a bye, but I think Tua is going to be electric, so I'm really, really excited for that. Now, moving on to the Patriots. They look like an absolute disaster. I haven't had much to say about them pretty much this entire year. I've just been highlighting the running back snap share, which if you've paid attention to the Patriots for forever now, I mean, who knows what they're ever going to do with the running backs. But this week, Rex Burkhead got the highest snap share out of all the running backs. Don't want to say majority because it wasn't over 50%, but 46.9% of the snaps, 4 for 12 rushing, and then 3 for 35 receiving. Damian Harris had 42.9% of the snaps, 10 for 58 rushing, 1 for 12 receiving. And James White had 18.4% of the snaps, 1 for 3 receiving. Again, there's no way to kind of figure out this Patriots backfield at all. It's just basically whoever Belichick feels like is who he's going to play. Also didn't put on here, but wide receiver N'Keal Harry did leave this game with a head injury and did not return. So if you have him, that's significant. But I don't really think that many people are starting N'Keal Harry, especially with the way this offense is operating. Not much else to say about the Patriots. I'm not really sure how to approach these running backs going forward. I don't really trust any of them. You shouldn't trust any of them. So I personally would just not start them. But going on to the Buffalo Bills here, we have the running back snap share. We have Devin Singletary and Zach Moss. Moss actually got a decent amount of the snap share compared to Devin Singletary this week. We had Singletary at 55.6% and Moss at 45.8%. Singletary, 8 for 29 rushing, 2 for 18 receiving, and then Zach Moss, 7 for 47 rushing, and 3 for 25 receiving. Now, the big guy that I do want to mention here is wide receiver Cole Beasley, who goes for 11 catches, 112 yards on 12 targets. That's a 29.3% of the snap share. Now, Cole Beasley has been a guy that has been so reliable this year. I'm picking him up no matter what league I'm in, especially PPR. Josh Allen loves him. He is catching a lot of these short passes. And ever since the first 2 weeks, Cole Beasley has kind of taken over as Josh Allen's favorite number 2 target. Well, I should say second favorite target, behind Diggs. But Cole Beasley's kind of taken over that role from John Brown. John Brown has kind of faded away, and now it is Cole Beasley. And as long as Josh Allen is just putting up these ridiculous stats and passing a ton, I think that Cole Beasley is going to be a pretty reliable option, especially in PPR leagues where he's getting all these catches. 11 catches in this game, 12 targets, 29.3% of the share. So if you need a wide receiver, definitely consider picking up Cole Beasley. He is for sure one of the top options at that position this week. Now, to move on to the AFC North, again, just bear with me here. It's my first time doing the live stream with these graphics, so I'm just trying to work through the tech issues that come along with it. But that first one worked out well. So, all right. So now we have the AFC North. So the Baltimore Ravens were on a bye this week. Ingram did get hurt in week 6. So I think it'll be interesting to see if he plays, and if he doesn't, how that'll work out. But I'm not going to talk about that for now. Not going to talk about the Ravens since they were on a bye week. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals, we had Joe Mixon, the running back, missed the game with a foot injury, and Gio Bernard in his place, 13 for 37 rushing, 5 for 59, and 1 receiving on 5 targets. Gio Bernard never really seems to perform like that well when Joe Mixon is out. Like over the last few years, anytime Gio Bernard has got in, everyone picks him up, everyone starts him, and he always has like a decent game. Nothing like spectacular. Nothing like he's not going to go and put up 25 to 30 points. Like that's just not going to happen for whatever reason. But again, if you have Mixon, Gio Bernard, you should roster him. Remains a decent option for sure. Now, wide receiver T. Higgins, he's already owned in pretty much every league, but I decided to throw him on there because I've been hyping him up for like 4 weeks straight now. We have T. Higgins had 5 catches, 71 yards, and 1 touchdown receiving, 1 for 7 rushing. And then Higgins has this impressive performance. Once again, he is a must-add if he's available in your league. Now, moving on to the Pittsburgh Steelers, we have wide receiver Deontay Johnson, who returns from injury, goes for 9 catches, 80 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 15 targets, which was 30.6% of the snap share. And he ended up leaving the game with a leg injury. Now, I think it's obviously I feel bad for Deontay Johnson, but every single time this guy gets healthy, he leaves the game with a leg injury. And every single, not a leg injury, but every single time he plays a full game, it seems, or starts a game, I should say, he gets hurt in the middle and has to leave. So that's unfortunate because every time he's actually played significant time in a game, he's been really, really, really good. And as a result, Chase Claypool's production kind of plummeted for sure. He only had 1 catch for -2 receiving yards on 1 target in this game. And for sure, it's because Deontay Johnson was back. So hopefully Deontay Johnson's leg injury is not that serious and he could, end up going next week. But I really like Deontay Johnson. He is owned in pretty much every league. So again, this really just hurts Chase Claypool for sure. I know I have a friend who started Chase Claypool against me this week. Shout out Jake. And he got -0.2, and it was pretty hilarious because he also played CeeDee Lamb and they combined for -0.1 against me, which is absolutely great. So pretty hilarious, but Chase Claypool's production is something to monitor going forward for sure. And it's all because of Deontay Johnson. Now moving on to the Cleveland Browns. Odell Beckham Jr. is out for the season with a torn ACL. Very unfortunate to see, but the Browns offense pretty much played completely better without him. Wide receiver Rashard Higgins and Donovan Peoples-Jones are 2 names to watch for sure. Higgins had 6 receptions for 110 yards in this game. Donovan Peoples-Jones, in addition to catching the game-winning touchdown, he also had 3 catches for 56 yards. I have a feeling that with Odell now out, not only does Landry's stock go up, but I also think that one of these two guys, whether it be Higgins or the rookie from Michigan, Donovan Peoples-Jones, one of those guys is going to end up being a very solid fantasy option, if not both of them. Especially if Baker Mayfield continues to pass the way he did with Odell Beckham not in the lineup. So going to have to monitor those names. Another thing to mention here is that Austin Hooper, the tight end, missed week 7 with an appendicitis. I shouldn't say appendix injury. That's kind of weird to say, but appendicitis. So he had to have surgery on that, and we will see when he's back. But I have a feeling he'll probably miss another week. And in that case, David Njoku and Harrison Bryant, who actually combined for 3 touchdowns, could be options in deep leagues, but I would just still stay away from this Browns tight end situation. Now to move on to the AFC South. Again, bear with me here. Just got to get this screen share going. Perfect. So Jaguars, nothing to report. Nothing major happened in that game. No injuries. Nothing. No guy completely went off to make me talk about them in the waiver wire. So nothing there. In terms of the Indianapolis Colts, they were on a bye week, so I'm not going to touch on them either. And then the Tennessee Titans, we have wide receiver Corey Davis. He finally returned from the COVID-19 list and had a solid game. 6 catches for 35 yards and 1 touchdown receiving. Now, he's still only 22% owned in all my own percentages. I go by ESPN leagues because I just do a bunch of leagues on ESPN. So I just have been going by that. So he's only 22% owned in ESPN leagues. He's been pretty consistent when he's played. And now he has A.J. Brown back to take a lot of the attention off of him. So I think that Davis could be an option to pick up potentially. And he's just been really consistent. He's not going to go off for you one week, but he's also, I don't think he's going to get like 2 points for you in a week. He's just been very, very consistent, especially with the Titans playing well. Now, in terms of Houston Texans, not much to talk about. Wide receiver Brandon Cooks, who I've mentioned the last few weeks, 7 catches for 60 yards receiving on 9 targets, which was 23.7% of the share. Cooks is unfortunately owned in pretty much every league so far. So, not much you could do about that now, but I have been talking about it in the last few weeks, which is why I brought him up here. Wide receiver Randall Cobb, much more highly available. However, would not really consider picking him up, because he's just the 3rd receiver on that team, and that's just the truth. Unless he gets traded, which there have been Randall Cobb trade rumors, so keep an eye out on that. But he did have 8 for 95 receiving on 10 targets, 26.3% of the target share. I'd keep an eye on him. That's all. I just wanted to throw it out there because he did have a really good game and led the team in targets here. Now to move on to the AFC West. Oh, this app here that I'm using the live stream is making me go through like 3 links in order to get to the picture. It's killing me here. Killing me on time. All righty. The AFC West. So the big story with the Kansas City Chiefs this week was who was going to get more snaps, Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Le'Veon Bell. It turns out that Edwards-Helaire did get 51% of the snaps compared to Le'Veon Bell's 33.3% of the snaps. Now, the reason that's adding up to in the 80s is because in garbage time, once they were already blowing out the Broncos, DeAndre Washington got some carries. Didn't want to throw him on the graphic because there was no point of that. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 8 for 46 and 1 touchdown rushing. And he also had 1 for 17 receiving, and Bell had 6 for 39 rushing. So did look really, really good in his limited time. Now, because the Chiefs had, I believe they had a kickoff return touchdown, and they also had an interception TD. They were not actually on the field that much in terms of their offense. So that's why these guys didn't really get that many carries. The Chiefs just didn't run that many plays on offense. Like Mahomes did not have a great statistical day either, and it was snowing. So just a down day for the offense, even though they scored over 40 points. It was a lot because of defense and special teams. But again, I think Edwards-Helaire is always going to have an edge over Bell, at least for the rest of the season. But Bell will still play that Kareem Hunt type role when Nick Chubb is playing in Cleveland, where they'll complement each other nice. Bell, I expect to catch a lot more passes going forward. He was not using the passing game this week. I just think that that's a combination between the Chiefs not having the ball that much, Bell only having 1 week to learn the playbook. And yeah, I see Bell being a pretty solid option going forward, but I know he's obviously owned in most leagues, but I just hold off for 1 more week, see how he does next week, and then he could potentially be an option going forward. Now, the Chargers, the running back snap share we're going to talk about. So Eckler obviously out still with that hamstring injury. Not sure when he's coming back, but it isn't anytime soon. Everyone is completely confused figuring out who is actually the guy behind him. Josh Kelly or Justin Jackson. The truth is that neither one of them is that good at all. I mean, this is pretty much the third consecutive week that neither of them have done anything. But it's worth noting that Joshua Kelly did have 46.8% of the snap share, 12 for 29 rushing, 5 for 24 receiving on 5 targets. Justin Jackson had a little bit less this week, 39.0% of the snaps, 5 for 12 rushing, 5 for 43 receiving on 6 targets. Again, that RB snap share, kind of hard to read at this point for sure. Kelly did not get as many snaps as Jackson the last few weeks because Kelly was having fumbling problems. I guess that they're starting to rely on him a little bit more now. But again, Jacksonville's one of the worst running defenses in the league. Everyone loved Justin Jackson this week because of that, and neither of them produced anything. I'm not too high on either of them going forward. But the one guy I do want to talk about from the Chargers is quarterback Justin Herbert. This guy is an absolute beast. I did not see this coming when he was in college. I mean, I watch college football all the time. I'm a huge college football fan. And Herbert was a guy that I thought was going to come into the league, and I thought he was going to be decent. I didn't think he was going to be great. I definitely did not think he'd be great right away. And this week, he completed 27 of his 43 passes, 347 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He also had 9 for 66 and a touchdown rushing. That's cut off by the border there. I apologize there. I'm going to have to figure out how to get this fixed, tech-wise. But Justin Herbert, if you need a quarterback, you need to pick up Justin Herbert. I mean, look, people probably think he's going to slow down. And is he going to keep up this ridiculous production the rest of the year? No. Could he be a very reliable fantasy quarterback? Yes. So pick up Justin Herbert if you need a quarterback or if you have a QB on a bye week and need one there. Now, moving on to the Las Vegas Raiders, we have wide receiver Nelson Agholor, a name that I never thought I would say this year. Pretty funny that I'm mentioning him now. 5 for 107 and a touchdown receiving on 9 targets, 25% target share. He has a touchdown in the last 3 games. It's worth a shot in deep leagues. It really is. He's available in pretty much like 98% of leagues, maybe today with the few people that don't have actual waivers and just pick people up. Maybe he's only 96 now, but he's available in over 90% of leagues. If you're in a deep league, I give it a shot because TD in 3 straight games, once he has a TD in 2 straight games, you're like, I'm not really going to trust it. 3 straight games, you're like, I'll give it a shot. So we'll see what he does going forward. But yeah, that's all I have for the Raiders. And moving on to the Denver Broncos, Noah Fant, the tight end, returned from his ankle injury, 3 for 38 on 7 targets, 18.4% target share. Running back Melvin Gordon also returned from his illness, 17 for 68 and a touchdown rushing, 2 for 12 receiving on 4 targets. And Phillip Lindsay left the game with a concussion. So notable there. Gordon is going to get pretty much almost all the carries next week, with maybe Royce Freeman mixing a couple here and there if Lindsay cannot go. Now, a guy that I mentioned the last few weeks, wide receiver Tim Patrick. He's been really good the last few weeks, but this week didn't do much. 3 for 44 receiving on 4 targets, only 10.5% of the target share. So in terms of the Broncos here, not much more to say. What I would say is that Noah Fant, I am getting a little bit worried because their backup tight end, I should say, Albert, I don't know how to say the last name, so I'm just going to call him Albert O. He is being used a lot. He had 7 catches this week. I believe he either led the team in targets or was close to it. So I'm afraid that Fant's usage is going to go down a little bit, but I don't want to completely assume things off of this game because 1, it was against the Chiefs, and 2, it was in the snow. So just a thing to keep an eye on in terms of Noah Fant. But Tim Patrick, I still think he's going to be a good option going forward with Cortland Sutton just out for the year. So things to monitor in Denver. Now we're going to move to the NFC, I should say. We're going to move to the NFC least, and we have an absolute disgrace. That is the Dallas Cowboys here. Now, had to make a little bit of a joke here. So I didn't put anything down for the Dallas Cowboys. I just put one of my favorite Stephen A. Smith quotes. This is bad. This is very, very bad. If you haven't seen that meme or if you haven't seen that meme or clip, be sure to look at it. It's hilarious. If I wasn't doing this live stream, I would have edited it into the video and put it in. But the Dallas Cowboys are an absolute disaster. Andy Dalton is terrible. Mike McCarthy is terrible. Andy Dalton also left the game with a concussion, so he's probably going to miss next week based on how dirty that hit was and how, I can't see him just coming back next week. And if that's the case, if they don't trade for a quarterback, if they don't sign a guy, they are starting an undrafted quarterback, Ben DiNucci from James Madison from the FCS level next week. It's an absolute disaster for anybody that has wide receivers or tight ends from the Dallas Cowboys. This is just going to be the scenario for them going forward, and it's going to be very, very bad the rest of the season. But moving on to the New York Giants, we had running back Devonta Freeman, who left the game with an ankle injury. Going to have to monitor him this week. He does have 11 days to recover because they played on Thursday night. So he has about a week and a half to recover from that. Hopefully he will be fine for next week. But just worth noting that the running back snap share with him missing part of the game, Wayne Gallman, 53.3%, 10 for 34 and 1 touchdown rushing, and then 5 for 20 receiving on 5 targets. Gallman has had his opportunities over the last few years, and he hasn't really done anything, but this was a really, really good game for him, so props to him for sure. And if Freeman can't go in deep leagues with multiple flex, then Gallman could be an option, but again, very, very deep leagues and nothing more than that. Dion Lewis, 25% of the snaps, 3 for 23 rushing, and Devonta Freeman, before he got hurt, 3 for 8 rushing as well. Now, moving on to the Washington football team, we have the running back snap share, which we have been talking about every single week. J.D. McKissic and Antonio Gibson completely split down the middle, 50-50. How often did you see that? Almost never. But McKissic, 5 for 35 rushing, 2 for 16 receiving on only 2 targets. And Gibson went absolutely off, presumably because he played the Dallas defense and every single player goes off against them. 20 for 128 and 1 rushing. I really like Gibson. He's really, really good. And I don't know if you own Gibson, and I don't know if you've looked at the schedule upcoming, but they do have a bye week this week. And then in some sort of order, they play Dallas again. They play the Giants. They play the Bengals. They play the Lions. This guy has good matchup after good matchup after good matchup. And as a Gibson owner, I'm extremely, extremely excited for him moving forward. I think he's going to be a beast the rest of the year. Also put on there that Peyton Barber had 31.8% of the snaps, 10 carries for 34 yards. They were killing the Cowboys, and that's probably the only reason why Barber got snaps and carries, I should say also. But moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles, where we have some of our image cut off here. I do apologize for that if you're watching through video. But running back Miles Sanders missed week 7 with a knee injury. Running back Boston Scott replaced him, 12 for 46 rushing, 3 for 46 and a touchdown receiving on 5 targets. That's supposed to say targets, not touches. My bad on the typo there. Plays Dallas next week. So if Boston Scott is somehow still available in your league and Miles Sanders is ruled out, Boston Scott is going to be Antonio Gibson this week going off against the Dallas Cowboys defense. So be sure to pick him up if he's somehow still available. Wide receiver Deshaun Jackson came back and returned from an injury. 3 for 34 receiving on 5 targets, but unfortunately got hurt again with an ankle injury and left the game and is definitely out for an extended period of time now, which means that Travis Fulgham will continue to thrive. 5 for 73 receiving on 11 targets, which was 26.8% of the share. So once again, Fulgham getting 10 plus targets. Guy is an absolute target animal right now, but I mean, he's just been a beast. So respect to Travis Fulgham. He's insane. Definitely pick him up if he's still available. But again, he's one of those guys that I don't think is available in most leagues right now. Now, worth noting that target tight end Richard Rodgers with Ertz and Goddard are still out right now. Richard Rodgers, the only tight end, 6 for 85 receiving on 8 targets. So he led the team in receiving, and Goddard is likely not going to be back until around week 10. Ertz is likely out for a few weeks now. So Richard Rodgers may be the only guy. Again, if you're in a deep league, maybe consider it. But other than that, I would not. So we are now looking at the AFC North, where we have the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Jones missed week 7 with a calf injury. Running back Jamal Williams replaced him, 19 for 77 and 1 rushing, 4 for 37 receiving on 5 targets. So if you have Aaron Jones, I hope you have Jamal Williams. But I feel like Aaron Jones, it was just a calf strain. I feel like he will be back next week for sure. And if he's not, Jamal Williams will be that guy again. Chicago Bears, nothing to report here in terms of injuries. Waiver wire, nothing significant to happen to them last night. They looked horrible. The Minnesota Vikings were on a bye this week. And now to move to the last team in this division, the NFC North, we have the Detroit Lions. Running back snap share. Gotta give a nice clap to Matt Patricia right now, who finally gave DeAndre Swift more snaps than Adrian Peterson for the first time all year. 44.1% of the snaps to Swift, 27.1% of the snaps to Peterson. Swift had 9 carries for 27 yards rushing, 4 for 21 receiving on 5 targets, and Peterson 11 for 29 rushing, 1 for 1 receiving. Finally, Matt Patricia did it. He did it. He gave Swift more snaps and respect, but now he just needs to give him more snaps and more carries because, again, Peterson had 11 carries, Swift had 9. So I hope Swift gets more carries. None of this is really significant to waiver wire. I just know a lot of people spent an early pick on DeAndre Swift and been waiting for him to get more carries and more touches every week. So this is just something we've been monitoring every single week. But to move on here to the NFC South, again, got to click through my 3 tabs here. I apologize for that. But we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The big news of the week, Antonio Brown, the wide receiver, he signed with the Bucs. Pick him up if you haven't already. He's pretty much picked up in every league already, so I assume he's not available. But one interesting thing this week was with the running back snap share, you have Leonard Fournette grabbing 55.7% of the snaps compared to Ronald Jones only getting 42.9%. Fournette had 11 for 50 rushing, 6 for 47 receiving on 7 targets, and then Jones had 13 for 34 and 1 rushing, 1 for 2 receiving. Now, apparently, I don't know this for sure, but from what I heard, Jones dropped a really bad pass, or I should say he had a really bad drop in the middle of this game, and then Fournette got a bunch of drives after him. So is that going to matter in a future game? I don't know, or was Jones just benched for the meantime during this game? Who knows? But I still think that Jones and Fournette could both be good options next week because they do play the Giants. So obviously very easy matchup for the Bucs. Now the Giants have had a decent defense, but I just expect them to get annihilated next week. And since they'll be up by so much, they are going to be running the football a lot likely. So to move on to other guys on this team, we have wide receiver Scotty Miller, 6 for 109 and 1 on 9 targets, 21.95% target share. So it looked like Miller's time was coming to an end with Tyler Johnson, the rookie from Minnesota, grabbing an increased amount of snaps. So, I mean, it looked like Miller was kind of borderline losing that third wide receiver job. Now he just emerges this week, but you have Antonio Brown coming in. So you say, okay, Scotty Miller probably going to be done after this week. Well, no, because Chris Godwin got hurt, had surgery on his finger, and will miss next week's game against the Giants. Brown is still suspended through week 8. So it's likely that Scotty Miller is going to end up being the number 2 receiver against the Giants. Miller is going to be a good option for this game because we know that the Giants, are a pretty easy matchup, I would say. If there's one place they're lacking, it is their secondary. Bradbury is going to end up being on Evans. So Scotty Miller, probably a good option next week. Moving on, though, to and quickly, before I do move on, I just want to give a shout out to Gronk, who finally looks like Gronk again. It was those first, few weeks where Gronk didn't really look like Gronk. Wasn't really playing well, wasn't moving well. But now once OJ Howard did go down with an injury, it's Gronk who's received an increase of targets, increased receptions. He had another touchdown this week, so good for him. A guy who's owned in pretty much most leagues, but just had to give him a shout out there. Then moving on to the Atlanta Falcons, not much to discuss here. Moving on to the Saints, we have Michael Thomas, who missed another game with an ankle injury or hamstring injury. Something bizarre is going on there. I'm almost questioning if he's hurt at this point because he had that, that week where he got suspended. I've seen rumors floating around that him and Sean Payton aren't getting along. I don't really know what's going on with Michael Thomas, but it's a problem, whatever it is, whether it's an injury, whether it's a dispute with a team, who knows. Wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders missed week 8 with COVID, missed week 7 with COVID. He will be missing week 8 next week as well, in all likelihood. So who are going to be the guys who are going to catch passes? Alvin Kamara, Traquan Smith. There was also Marquez Callaway, who caught a lot of passes this week, but wouldn't really touch him on waivers at all. So if you have Traquan Smith, good for you. You're probably going to get another week of him being the number one wide receiver on the team. Carolina Panthers, again, monitoring Christian McCaffrey's injury. He missed week 7 with an ankle injury. It is unknown when he'll return. Mike Davis is the guy until he comes back. The Panthers play a Thursday night game. I have a gut feeling that with this short rest Thursday night game, I don't think McCaffrey is going to play this week since it is just a 3-day week for them. But I do think McCaffrey will probably be back in week 9. So you may get one more week of Mike Davis if you have Mike Davis on your team. Good for you. But you may get one more week of him before McCaffrey returns. And luckily for you, if you own Mike Davis, it is against the Atlanta Falcons. So our last division we have here, the NFC West. And I have been waiting all video to talk about the NFC West, and you will see why in a few minutes. But first, we have the Seattle Seahawks. Running back Chris Carson left the game with a foot injury. Running back Carlos Hyde replaced him. He had 15 for 68 and 1 touchdown rushing, 3 for 8 receiving on 4 targets, but he does have a hamstring injury, which was reported after the game. Not great, but this is just going to be a thing that you have to monitor weekly, this entire running back situation. If you have Carson, you have to obviously monitor a situation. He's right now questionable for next week, but if Carson does not play, you should probably grab Hyde. Probably just grab Hyde just in case if you have another spot on your roster and you have Carson. But if both of them can't go, it's going to end up being a combination of Travis Homer and DJ Dallas. So again, we don't have a lot of information on this right now. It's just something you have to monitor for the rest of the week. And then the Arizona Cardinals, I've been waiting. I've been telling you every single week. I've been saying this for who knows how long now. And it unfortunately happened due to an ankle injury. So I feel bad for Kenyon Drake, and I hope that he does get better soon. However, Chase Edmonds, all those who stashed him weeks ago, finally get to use him. Like I've been waiting for this to happen. Chase Edmonds is going to be the number 1 running back this week because Kenyon Drake is out. Actually, the next 3 weeks because Drake is getting placed on IR with, an ankle ligament injury. But Chase Edmonds, number 1 pickup of the week if he is available. He had 5 for 58 rushing and 7 for 87 receiving on 7 targets in this game against the Seattle Seahawks. This guy's actually ridiculous. Like, I swear, just watch this guy play. His yards per touch is among the top of the league. He's one of the most efficient running backs just like ever. He gets literally 10 yards every time he touches the ball. So I expect Edmonds to be a top 10 running back while Kenyon Drake is out. Like, he's that good. Also got to give him a shout out because he is a local product. He's from Fordham. So went to Fordham. I'm from New York. Pretty cool to see a guy from Fordham doing what he's doing in the NFL. So good for Chase Edmonds. If you have him, congratulations. If he's available in your league, please pick him up. Also worth shouting out Christian Kirk, who played a really nice game with the wide receiver. 5 for 37 and 2 on 8 targets. Second straight game with two touchdowns for him. Could be an interesting pickup, but they do have a bye week this week, so still could be an interesting pickup, though, if you want to pick a guy up long term. Now, 49ers, sticky running back situation for sure. Raheem Mostert out for a couple more weeks. Niners are hopeful that Tevin Coleman will be back in week 8. He's had an injury, but who knows? Hopeful. They were not hopeful last week. They are hopeful this week. Hopefully he does come back, but if he doesn't, we have 3 more guys we have to talk about. Jeff Wilson Jr., who came from off the map pretty much to get 17 for 112 and 3 touchdowns rushing against the New England Patriots this week. 2 for 8 receiving. Now, the unfortunate thing is that Jeff Wilson Jr. did leave this game with an ankle injury. Will likely miss next week's game. So now it's down to running backs Jermichael Hasty and running back Jerick McKinnon if Coleman cannot go. Hasty 9 for 57 rushing, 1 for 16 receiving, continues to look really, really good. And McKinnon only got 3 carries for -1 yards in this game. I expected Jerick McKinnon to be the number 1 running back this week in week 7 for the Niners. So I don't know what's going on there, but that was really bizarre. I guess if Tevin Coleman is playing and they announce he's playing, you gotta roll with him this week. He's going to be the guy. However, if Coleman is out and Wilson's out and Mostert is out, I would think at this point that Hasty's going to be the guy over McKinnon, but who knows? Because Shanahan's just pretty much doing whatever he wants with these running backs. But Hasty's look really, really good. So if you're in a deep league, definitely monitor the situation, considering picking him up. Now, wide receiver Deebo Samuel also got hurt, likely out next week with a hamstring injury. Who's going to be the guy? It's going to be Brandon Ayuk, 6 for 115 in this game on 7 targets. The rookie wide receiver from Arizona State, the first-round pick, he's really, really good. And he's going to be the number 1 guy with Debo out. So, again, I've just been mentioning him the last few weeks. If you're in a league and he is not owned, pick him up. Los Angeles Rams, what a way to end. Nothing really else to say here in terms of injuries, in terms of the waiver wire. So, that's it for the Week 8 waiver wire show. Thank you, everybody who tuned in live. This was my first live show, so sorry if I was just, figuring things out technologically. It was not easy. I had to, kind of plan. This was a last-minute plan. Was just kind of doing an experiment. Let me know in the comments whether you like the live show, whether you would rather me, do a video pre-recorded and post it. Like, let me know what you thought about this. If it's something you want me to do it, if it's something you want me to do again, just let me know. But yeah, this was really fun. And also good luck on your waiver wire pickups this week. And be sure to follow me on Twitter at @sports_Burd if you haven't already. Be sure to subscribe to this channel and be sure to like this video. It really helps me out. Be sure to also subscribe to the Sports Bird podcast on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. And goodbye, everyone. Once again, good luck with your waiver wire